Hey guys, Mark Kwok here. Today let's do a Q&A. It's 10 questions and I'll try to get through them quickly, but they have to do with a bunch of different random stuff. Let's start with the first question. All right, are you getting the new Series 10 watch from Louis Luzuka? So obviously we're talking about the Apple Watch. And so the answer is no. I have the Ultra and I've actually made a video about it before. I have the first generation. I haven't switched to the second generation, and frankly, I don't use my Apple Watch that much beyond fitness stuff. And so it does way more than I really needed to do anyway. So getting the latest and greatest on that just doesn't make sense for me. Number two, $2,000 for a hoodie, not okay, but you spend $20,000 on a watch? From Phil B 9550. Okay, so this is in response to a video a long time ago where I talked about a wish list that I had, and it would be awesome if I had a Loro Piana hoodie. It's just like wool, but those are super, super expensive. High luxury brand, up to like $2,000 for simply a hoodie. In my case, I believe that anything like above $150, $200 for a hoodie, like you start to really max out on quality for hoodies. And so there's so many options that are cheaper than going straight to Loro Piana. Whereas with watches, it's very deliberate on terms of pricing. Yeah, there are substitutes that are cheaper, but they're not quite the same thing. Like a Rolex is a Rolex, and the pricing of a Rolex is the pricing of a Rolex. You can't really substitute it with a brand you don't really know. So maybe it's possible the quality of a watch that's $5,000 is the same as like a $20,000 watch, but you can't substitute things like brand name or history and heritage or certain patents for specific technologies. Like these things exist in watches. I don't think they exist so much in hoodies. The second thing I will say is that when it comes to watches, they're a lot more durable for long-term use. Hoodies can get rattly and pilly very quickly, and so the depreciation element is way more significant from a hoodie than a watch. Sometimes with certain watches, especially the ones I choose, oftentimes the value actually goes up over time. So there's just no way that occurs for a hoodie, and so that's part of the calculation as well. Number three, do you have any other interests? Most of your videos are basically reviews or advertisements for what some people might consider to be high-end clothing or homeware products. Do you get paid to do this? From Adam MK60M. The first part of your question, do I have other interests? Yes, and it's actually indicative of this channel. You can tell that there are various things I talk about beyond just like one thing. Like I try to keep it to some extent focused on like products that I love, just because that was the genesis of this channel. But the reality is I'm like a super like generalist and I love various things. You want to talk mixing cocktails? Let's talk about it. You want to talk about riding a motorcycle? Let's talk about it. The last part of that question was, do I get paid to do this? Like the reality is, you guys can see my subscriber count. It's nothing special compared to so many. I mean, I'm really thankful for the amount of subscribers I have, but there are people with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of subscribers. They're the ones really making real money. For me, this is kind of like a hobby that I really enjoy. I'll get a little bit of AdSense money here and there to maybe buy a product, then I can review. That's about as far as it goes. Number four, what do you think about the new Omega Speedmaster FOIS, which is the first Omega in space? So yes, this is by AbbVie. For context, recently Omega relaunched a favorite, the Omega Speedmaster, first Omega in space. It's actually based off of one of the oldest Speedmaster designs, the CK2998. Really expensive watch if you want to try to get vintage, but super special because it was like before the Speedmaster went to the moon. It has a great history, a really cool watch. It also looks great. They created a pseudo replica of that many years back. They just released a version that has like this dark blue dial, like these orange markers, and it just, okay, here's my thought. Beautiful watch. I'm a big fan of it. In fact, one second. This is gonna seem ridiculous, but this is a painting that I drew during paint night for a fun little thing. What is that? That's the first Omega in Space Speedmaster that just came out. It's a poor rendition, but nevertheless, that gives you an idea of how I feel about it. Quickly, I think it's a really cool spin on the Speedmaster. The dark blue dial. I mean, a lot of people have a problem with the fact that it has these really like faux Tina hour indices. It looks like it's trying to be an old watch, even though it's a new watch. I get it. I don't usually like Fotina, but there is something to also the idea of blue and orange being contrasting colors on a color wheel that make it look really, really good. I currently have the Ed White Speedmaster, which is also sort of like a vintage looking Speedmaster. I love it. This kind of does something similar at half the price. I don't think I'll get it because I have the Ed White and I'd prefer the Ed White. But nevertheless, I'm a fan. Number 5, how should I store my barber jacket in the summer when I'm not using it? So this is by Lin Viet Lu, 6340. I love barber jackets. I talk about it in a couple videos. However, I do live in Southern California now, and so the frank reality is I just don't wear barber jackets quite as often as I used to. They're meant for more inclement weather, supposed to kind of protect you from rain and things like that. But I can still answer your question. How do I store my barber jackets in the summer? The truth is I don't really do a good job of taking care of them. You're supposed to technically re-wax things. You're supposed to like sort of maintain it, but I just kind of keep it in a closet. And as it loses its wax, I have to just make a decision. Like, do I feel like this is a problem, or do I feel like this is okay and just gives some like patina essentially because it's kind of aging and so on. I frankly prefer that. I like the kind of wear and tear. Now, does it make it just as like waterproof? The answer is no, but my personal situation is I live in a place where there's very little rain, and so it's not that big of a deal. So not the best advice, but just because you're asking me personally, I don't really do much to it. I just keep it in the closet. I just keep it hung. There's not really much to it. Number 6, why do you have a wide range and not a focus for your videos? Pros and cons, and will you continue to do so? From Hi, I'm John Paul. It's true. I talk about dishware in one video, I talk about cameras in another, and then I talk about watches in another. It's just reflective of kind of who I am and all the different things I have interest in. And when I started this channel, I did want to do this like product review thing, but it kind of gets boring after time and time again if I'm doing the same thing over and over again. So I kind of want to spice it up. But the reality is that's not a great way to get wins on YouTube. YouTube likes when someone is like a niche person for something like a watch channel or like a tech channel. And that, I could go that direction. I mean, you guys let me know if that's the way I should go. These watches are all mainstream. Have you checked out Indies from Hobby Bobby 6767? So in my last, or a couple videos ago, I talked about my 6 favorite brands in watchmaking. And they are, for all intents and purposes, Alanga and Zona is a little bit more esoteric, I think, I would argue. But they're generally sort of well-known brands, established brands in the space. And Indies, they're becoming very popular. Even in the lower end, a company like Christopher Ward or Nevada Grenchen, like there's like all these different brands that are really popping up that are indies. And even on the high end, I mean, FP Journe or Recep, like there's just a lot of stuff there that is becoming hot. And when people go through the watch journey, they go sort of like, they look at Rolex, but then they don't want to go Rolex. So then they go something below that. And then they eventually work up to Rolex. Then they get tired of Rolex, so they start to go vintage, or they go to like other brands like Vacheron Constantin. And then after that, like they're kind of bored with that. So then now it's like, all right, well, how do I make myself special? Indies is the route now. And so I know even more about watches than everyone else because I know these very, very esoteric brands that no one knows about that only sells 100 pieces a year, etc. I haven't quite gotten there in my journey. It's not to say that I'm not going to. Frankly, I have very little interest in those indies for a number of reasons. Like one is that, I think if these are watches I want to keep for the long haul, indies, it's always risky as to whether or not that brand will stick around forever. Like a Patek Philippe is likely going to be around in 100 years because of the fact that they were around 100 years ago, right? Like that is just a calculated risk I'm taking. Also, with indies, you can just, it's so many directions you can go. So you really need to focus in one direction or another. Indies is a category. Sure, it is like a category, but within indies, like there's so many different directions. And so it really needs to come down to like what you really like. And just saying, hey, all indies doesn't, I wouldn't say that that's like the same thing, right? It's like these are different things across the board. All that to say, I'm never against indies. I don't know if I'll get there where that's like part of my watch collection. I want to keep things really, really small. I like I currently have 3 watches, and that's kind of where I want to stay. So in those scenarios, yeah, I just don't see myself going there in the near future. Next question. I mean, this one I'm just gonna say is like, where do you get your shirts? And so like I wear things on the video, and I get every video I have, like it's kind of a different shirt I'm wearing or something like that. And so people ask me. So the most common shirt that I wear is just a t-shirt from Reigning Champ. And I made a video about it here somewhere. And that is probably the thing I wear like the most, either as like an undershirt or as the layer that everyone sees. But from that, it just goes all over the place. This is Levi's Made and Crafted. The other one that I wore in another video was Orla Bar Brown. The other one was Acne Studios. It's like it kind of goes all over the place. Next question, again, another watch question. I think a lot of people liked the watch video I did fairly recently, so a bunch of these. But what happened to your 116520 white by Peter Morbius? So a lot of people know, and another popular video I have is on my Rolex Daytona. It's a older version of the Rolex Daytona, but something that I really treasured. I talk about it. It was like kind of a grail watch for me. So people are surprised, like, what the heck? You gave it away or sold it or whatever? Like, it's gone from your collection? The answer is yes. Just so that you know, that was a watch that I dreamed about for like almost a decade before I purchased it. And I purchased it for a great price, like compared to the market. And I was, I actually did sell it for above what I paid for it. But frankly, like the market went up and then down, and that's when I sold it. So I didn't really make as much money as maybe other folks have. Why did I sell it? This is probably for a longer video at some point, but Rolex is a fantastic brand, and there's a number of reasons why I chose to go Rolex. In fact, a lot of videos I have in the past talk about Rolex. It's one of my favorite brands even to this day, even though I don't own any Rolex right now. But I think with just the times and the society we live in and the interest in watch culture that has arose, Rolex has just so much baggage associated with it. And in one way, you could just forget that and say, hey, it's objectively a good watch. It holds its value, tells the time well, all this sort of stuff. But I can't help but feel like anywhere I go, there is some level of baggage of like me thinking, what am I portraying to the world here? I'm not saying Rolex is negative portrayal to the world, but I am saying that one, it is the most common brand I see luxury brand-wise anywhere. The Daytona specifically has just this hype element that's it's unavoidable. Up to a point, it's actually is to your benefit. And then at some other point, it is no longer to your benefit. It's like fear of getting robbed, or it's fear of being misconstrued as a materialism person, or fear of like, and yes, you could not think about what other people are thinking, but I mean, we're human, right? There's gonna be some element of that, and I don't wanna walk into certain places where most people are gonna recognize my watch and then make a judgment accordingly. And so for that reason, like I stay away from like all gold watches or all like, or just these super hype watches. And even if it is gonna be a hype watch, I wanna go like further back as vintage or something like that, just to make it seem a little bit more obscure or people can't recognize it quite as much. And so that's why, I mean, it sucks because I sometimes miss that watch for sure. I had my time with it and I loved it, and I still love the Daytona. It's just a perfect design in a lot of ways. But those are the reasons why I departed with it. Okay, so that was a long video. I apologize for how many words I have, but thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Mark Kwok. I will see you guys on the next one.